Well, welcome back, folks, to Jack's Corner, where truth and reality have a seat at the table. You know, as in Charles Dickens' novel, A Tale of Two Cities, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. Well, God has given us a reprieve from a totalitarian takeover in this country, with Trump having gotten into office. But Trump is just one man. So don't miss this marvelous opportunity that God has given you to save you and your children from the horrors of an authoritarian government run by the likes of the people that we have seen in Minnesota of late, who are actively protecting alien criminals. And when I say that, I'm saying these people who already have documented criminal records ranging from rape to murder to child trafficking and every other depravity under the sun. So with that, let's get into some of the topics for today. Let the lawsuits fly, folks. I want to see GoFundMe accounts explode with money to help ICE agents who are simply doing their job and enforcing the law to sue the media and all those who defame them and place them in danger for doing just their jobs. Just as Nick Sandmann successfully sued multiple media outlets for falsely smearing him as a racist, just as President Trump successfully sued several fake media outlets for millions for defamation, this is what must happen. And it has to happen here because it's the only way to get the left's attention and to break up that cabal of people who spread lies and defame people. The Minneapolis ICE agent who was forced to kill a woman in an obvious act of self-defense must file a defamation suit against every media outlet and even elected official that accused him of murder. And those people have to be held accountable. It was malicious and it was deliberate, all for the purpose of placing that agent and his family in danger. Every Democrat and activist who defamed this man need to be sued to the hilt. Do you realize that this particular agent months earlier had been hit by a car and dragged, causing him to have 300 stitches? These people who are protesting are not regular citizens. These are paid-for actors and insurrectionists, and they belong behind bars. Free speech does not include violence, and lies do not have any rights, only the truth. Since we are on the topic of Minneapolis and Minnesota, let's talk again about Mayor Frey of Minneapolis. None of what he has said to date have any truth to it at all, and it must be punished. Nothing he has said stands up to any fact check or to any truth. I believe that politicians like that must be held accountable in more ways than just at the ballot box, but by very strong punitive legal measures. In fact, Frey has crossed that legal line, in my estimation as an attorney, that places him in the category of felonious criminal conduct. I don't know why our Attorney General Pam Bondi, who is an excellent attorney, has delayed, but I would have had him in handcuffs, booked, and charged with the crime of obstructing federal officers in doing the duties of enforcing federal immigration laws. He and Governor Walz currently caught up in a massive fraud, along with Frey, to attract the attention of those who are typically the Democrat base's headline readers only, thinking themselves self-righteous to take and become outraged at the least provocation. As for Minnesota's Governor Walz, he's in hiding, and believe me, we may soon find him in chains as well for all of the $9 billion of fraud that was committed in that state, much of which went to the Somali community, which he wanted more and more imported. As you will recall, Walz recently said he liked to have more Somalis in his state because they are good for the state. When the stats show that even after 10 years, 55% of the Somalis there in Minnesota are still on welfare. Yes, and you are paying for it. And they all vote Democrat. That's what this is all about, folks. The left doesn't, and the Democrats don't have any compassion for people coming in this country. They only see them as voters. And to cap it all off, that socialist black attorney general of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, let the cat out of the bag and was caught on tape basically bribing the Somalis trading money for their votes.
There is a fight, there's a battle in this state, as well as in this country, for communities that look like us, having to fight to protect and keep what we have. And the only way we can protect what we have is by inserting ourselves into the political arena, putting our votes where it needs to be, but most importantly, putting our dollars in the right place and supporting candidates that will fight to protect our interests.
That's right.
You can only protect our interests when we have your back and you don't have to worry about who's behind you, right? And we have to be frank and honest. You are dealing with market forces and political situations, and you have to operate in the best manner that you can operate in this state, with your donors, with your power base. But if you are secure in your donor base, and if you are secure in your power base, you can act the way you want to act.
Money is freedom, sometimes.
Absolutely. And our community, our business owners, we are not the same community as 25 years ago.
My goodness, this guy needs to lose his license and be in chains himself. You see, folks, I've been telling you for years that the only way that the Democrats can win is by cheating, and they do. As the federal investigations proceed, it's very likely that we could see that the Attorney General there in Minnesota and the governor are wrapped up in federal corruption lawsuits to the tune of billions. And personally, I hope they end up in jail for all of the corruption and crimes that they have committed. Now you wonder why it's so hard for Republicans to win, particularly in Minnesota? Well, in part, it's because on my side of the equation, we find it inconceivable that people like Walz and Ellison and Frey could be so corrupt and evil, but they are. And that is what I have been trying to beat into the heads of conservatives, Republicans, and Christians for so long. They think of evil as something theoretical and not real. That's what places countries into civil war, because one side is out of tune with the corruption that's going on, and when the final moment comes, it's either fight or die. And this is a tragedy that is so unavoidable. Now, let's talk about the economy for a minute. Don't let the hell-bound liars in the media and the Democrat left talk you out of the victory that you are beginning to enjoy under Trump's economy. Remember how indifferent Biden was to you during his 4 years, and the Democrats kept telling you that the economy was good when the numbers said otherwise? Well, Trump has been digging us out of that hole, and Trump is telling you the truth and bringing you another economic boom as he did in his first term, for which so many of us were ungrateful when we voted him out of office. Here's some facts for you. Growth is accelerating due to improved productivity, which rose at an annualized 4.9% pace in the third quarter and 4.1% in the second quarter, both much, much, much better than anticipated. We are seeing a transformation of the growth engine, which is not artificially caused by the reliance on immigration to provide cheap labor. That was the false metric the Democrats left and gave you and tried to fool you with during Biden's administration. The economy is growing through investment and innovation now. Think about this. The average American hourly wage rose 3.8% in 2025, outpacing the rate of inflation by a full percentage point. Americans have more purchasing power than under Biden, and the Biden-era affordability crisis is fading. Now, on tariffs are closing the trade deficit. Remember how all the so-called experts, even some on the Republican Party side, tried to scare you about the tariffs and all the tragedy that would come about as a result? Well, a big reason the economy is performing so well is that the trade deficit is narrowing. In October, our trade deficit fell to $29 billion, and this is the smallest gap since June of 2009. September's numbers have now been revised down to $48 billion. We are making billions when that same money just 4 years ago was going overseas. We have used our financial and military might to end 8 wars, and there are economic benefits in there for you. So you need to think about that and think about the prices that have come down. Don't be gaslit by what the Democrats are telling you. Now, I want to go back and talk about why we are not screaming for the prosecution of Democrat treason. There is a coordinated planned mission by Democrats to use paid protesters to impede ICE agents from enforcing immigration laws, which is a felony. Remember how they were all outraged over the arrest of Monroe of Venezuela? They always take the side of America's enemies, don't they? Friends, you must start speaking up. Stop being cowards. Fight. If for nothing else, fight for your children's sake. In every blue, liberal, anti-God state, they attack our officers from what? Listen carefully, because you could be complicit with the criminals. The Democrats are stopping ICE officials from arresting convicted child rapists, traffickers, kidnappers, murderers, robbers, drug dealers, gang members. Now hear me out. This is who ICE is going after, and that makes the Democrats who want to stop the removal of these criminals, who are already indicted criminals, from our streets. This is a crime in itself to harbor criminals. Have we lost our minds? Why are you not up in arms and out of your chairs calling for your senators and your representatives, screaming your outrage at this unbelievable crime that's being committed by a political party in almost total? It's time for your voices to start registering in the polls. Your leaders need your help. Here's the next thing I want you to see. I want class action suits by ICE and individual members suing Minnesota Mayor Frey and Governor Walz and others for defamation. Just as Trump has sued and won tens of millions against the media for their defamation, this is the only way to stop the outright lying that influences the simple-minded. That's the constituency of the Democrat left. It has to stop, and the lawsuits must start flying. When you call the group of law officers murderers and every other name with no supportive evidence, then you have a cause of action. Bankrupt these people with lawsuits and attorney's fees. This is the main device to stop the lies. Remember, there is no such thing as free speech for the lie and violence. Violence is not free speech. Also, opinions divorced from fact and reality are not opinions protected by the Constitution. Also, the incitement to violence is not protected free speech. Only you can stop this. Now, I want you to think about this. And this is something that should not even be necessary for me to say. I'm pleading with you to protect yourselves and your family. That's absurd that I should even have to go to that extent. Thinking correctly, absent action, is absurdity. Here's one for you as it relates to the lady that was shot in Minneapolis. Sunday on CNN's State of the Union, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey said anybody who watched the video of an Immigration and Customs Enforcement officer shooting Renee Good can see she was not a domestic terrorist. He's a liar, and a new video has shown otherwise. Let me tell you about how Miss Not So Good really was not. She was married 3 times. The first time was to a man. She had 2 kids that were taken from her. Then she married another man, divorced him. Then she decided to marry a woman. And then after Trump won, she and her lesbian lover wife took off to Canada. And then they got more and more radicalized. And as they became more radicalized, they moved back to join the movement to obstruct justice and immigration control in this country. There is more salacious stuff out there about her, but this was not a good woman. And I'm not justifying her shooting, but she now stands before a holy God. She despised in word and deed the God she now stands before. Folks, don't be fooled. She was trained to obstruct justice and was in essence an enemy combatant. Now, you have heard me use the term stochastic terrorism in the past. That means that you demonize others enough and in such a way that you increase the probability of violence against them. The new Democrat Party, controlled by the radical left, have now developed dog whistles and ways of signaling to protesters and those on the left to increase the violence and the chaos like we've seen in Minneapolis. This comes from a long-time, old, established Democrat strategists and organizers of years ago who have now gotten apoplectic about it. They have all of a sudden seen the light, such as Julian Epstein, who I used to deplore. And just recently, he was on TV on a talk show, and he has come around, and he's not only revealing what is going on inside his Democratic Party, but is doing so with tremendous fear as to what's going on and believing it can destroy the country. Then there is Mark Penn, another analyst, a Democrat analyst of years and years that I've watched, who is echoing the same warning. Then there is Doug Schoen, who I have gotten to know and have met many times, and particularly when I was a delegate for Bush in New York City. It was back then that Doug flat out told me the exact numbers that Bush would win by. His insights were stunning. They were stunning then, but no less now, as even he is alarmed as to what has taken over what was his Democrat Party. Folks, it's not just Republicans that are alarmed, it's old school Democrats. But then they were part of the problems. They were the ones that basically began the decay, and they didn't see it, and they didn't see where it was going to end up. But I don't let the Republicans off the hook for being asleep at the switch and so inept at the game of political chess. I chastise them too, and I call myself an equal opportunity criticizer. That's why I keep pointing out to you the ones that are the enemies of the country and in charge of the Democrat Party now. I've called them out. I've called these people out in the Senate, the likes of Murphy and Cohen and Schumer, Elizabeth Warren, Senator Von Hollen, and so many others who could not stand up to a cross-examination if we had an honest press corps. They are pathological liars. Again, these are some of the most dangerous anti-American traitors in our government, and even some of the older generation Democrats are seeing it and yelling out the warning. You can no longer afford to lounge around in your living rooms and be inactive. Remember, I've given you many action plans in my past podcast of things that you can do that will be effective in reversing this trend. Now I want to wrap things up, and I want to touch briefly upon foreign relations and particularly what has now become known as the Monroe Doctrine. This is formerly known as the Monroe Doctrine. One of our earliest presidents was Monroe, who came up with the doctrine to keep the poisons and the diseases of the old countries in Europe out of our hemisphere. Trump is now trying to do the same thing. Marlowe of Breitbart News recently said, I think about Trump's foreign policy, what he's doing right now, which is incredibly coherent, and it is. It's because what he's looking at is what are actually threats to the United States and how you make America stronger. Many think that his overtures with regard to Greenland are a joke, but let me tell you that there is a nightmare scenario going on that you don't know anything about, and the media doesn't want you to know about it. Russia has nuclear submarine bases in the Arctic areas, and if one ended up on Greenland, it could strike the United States within minutes. There is a base in Scotland, but Scotland is no friend of the United States, and that would be the first base that the Russians would take out. Moreover, China has been making inroads into Greenland for the rare earth minerals, but they don't need to be setting up bases there, neither does Russia. That is in the Western Hemisphere, and it's at our northern part of the Western Hemisphere. And that just shortens the time where missiles can be fired and land within our homeland. So, no, get rid of the silly talk with regards to, well, we want colonialism, we just want to expand and take over Greenland. That's not the case. There is some military strategic importance all tied to it. So you see, it's not so simple, not so innocent, and it certainly isn't a joke. So folks, let's stop laughing about taking over Greenland and start seeing the bigger picture. It's either we do or the Chinese and the Russians do. It's your choice. Let's not be stupid about this. Then we have Venezuela, who has the largest oil reserves in the world outside of the United States. It's not about oil because we have enough ourselves, thanks to Trump. The real issue is the communism that Venezuela is spreading in Central and South America. China is wanting to put bases there, and Russia is wanting to prop up Cuba to put bases and intelligence sources 90 miles off of our shore. Again, the Democrats are all for our enemies and do not look forward with regards to what is really necessary and what's really going on to protect America's interest in the future. Well, that gives you a thumbnail sketch as to what is really working behind the scenes when you hear the topics of Greenland and Venezuela. Don't treat it as a joke. It's serious. There is some serious military strategy going on behind the scenes there. Okay, well, with that, folks, that pretty much brings us up to date on the news and the things that you haven't been told on things of current events circulating, and it is a target-rich environment today. So don't forget to check us out on bluegrasschronicles.com and for other commentary, books, and articles. And until next time, I'm Jack Richardson with Jack's Corner.